Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. I'm coming to you again from Aoyama Park next to Tokyo National Arts Center, about 10 minutes walk from Roppongi Hills. It's kind of a wet and cloudy day in Tokyo today. Kind of an unusual July we've had so far. Today is July 9th, and so far I believe we've had rain every single day this July. Sometimes not a lot of rain, but at least a little bit of rain every single day, which is a little bit unusual for July. In Japan, the rainy season is normally in June, and we can expect lots and lots of rain at that time. July is usually when the weather clears up and it just becomes really hot and humid, and the cicadas make their appearance and start making the noise, which Japanese summers are famous for. The rain this July is quite heavy, especially in western Japan. They've had heavy storms there with landslides and mudslides and a few fatalities, unfortunately. Here in the east part of Japan, we haven't had that kind of heavy rain. We just had that kind of annoying rain, which happens to come when you are making plans to go outdoors and do something. I expect that the rain will eventually move on and we'll get back to our hot and humid summer, and we can get to the summer festival season, though unfortunately I think a few of our festivals this summer have been cancelled, and some of them have been kind of I guess limited with the government trying to enact social distancing policies and things like that. A lot of the festivals here are not so crowded. They're just ordinary neighborhood kind of things where people go to enjoy the music and dancing and you know, the cheap food and toys and stuff for their kids, whereas other festivals are highly organized and very crowded affairs. Our festival in our neighborhood, the big one, is held in Roppongi Hills on a big stage, and Roppongi is kind of a wealthy area in Tokyo, so they have kind of the best of everything, the best music, and the people who do the announcement are famous celebrities and things like that. But unfortunately, it's incredibly crowded. You can't really find room to dance on the stage, and they have times when they call up the kids to come up and perform and stuff like that. But there are so many people there; it's like difficult to get your kids up to the stage where they can dance. It's kind of sad this year. I was really looking forward to the festivals this summer and hoping to be able to make videos about a few of them. But hopefully next year things will be better. We'll be able to enjoy the summer as it should be enjoyed, and enjoy the festivals the way we like to enjoy them here in Japan. Anyway, today's video is about another Konica camera, and one that I haven't, another one which I haven't had a lot of experience with, but one which I came across this week and I thought might be interesting. Today's camera is the Konica EE Matic Deluxe, which was introduced in Japan in 1962 or 1963. The Konica EE Matic is an automatic exposure camera which was designed to appeal to the mass market. For people who wanted a camera which would take good pictures very easily and didn't require a lot of skill to use. In this time in Japan, automatic cameras were becoming, I guess, all the rage. Prior to the advent of these automatic cameras, pretty much everything had to be done manually. And the automatic cameras caught on quite quickly, and they were popular sellers here in Japan and elsewhere. A lot of the concern before was being able to make an automatic camera which was able to make accurate exposures. But by the time the Konica EE Matic was introduced, the Japanese companies had pretty well perfected the automatic exposure system, and these cameras were able to make really good exposures. If you take a look at the EE Matic camera, it's quite similar to the other Konica rangefinder cameras like the Auto S2 or Auto S1.6, and it even shares some of the same parts which are used on the other cameras. To me, it appears like this camera is just a slight bit smaller. It's just about the same height, but perhaps it's a little bit less wide. And of course, as this is an automatic camera, the lens assembly is arranged a little bit differently, and the controls are different. So let's go ahead and take a look at the features and functions and controls of the Konica EE Matic Deluxe. And starting at the top here, we have the film rewind knob, which pops out to make it easier to rewind the film. And this is the same part which you find on some of the other Konica rangefinder cameras. Here we have the shoe for mounting a flash gun. And if you're mounting a flash gun, there's a socket on the front where you can attach your flash sync cord. Also on the flash shoe, there's a dust cover here which you can lift up and slide offwards to the rear. And if you do that, underneath you'll find an access hole which allows access to the vertical adjustment on the rangefinder. Next to that we have the dial which we use to adjust the film speed. And fortunately, the Matic has a very useful range of film speeds. It runs from ISO 12 to ISO 400. In the past, in the 70s and 80s, there was quite a large variety of film speeds available, all the way up to ISO 3200 and sometimes even 6400. But nowadays, as digital has become more popular, our choice in film has become a little bit more limited, and this film scale kind of fits perfectly the film speeds we have available today. If you like to shoot Kodak Tri-X, the 400 speed setting is perfect, and if you like, say more common, say Kodak or Fuji films, the 100 or 200 speeds are quite convenient, and you also have 50 speed if you like shooting slide film. Next to this dial we have the shutter speed button, which is kind of a long button because of the program automatic operation. When the light meter picks up light, it causes a needle to move, and as you move the button downward, it's kind of a step cam system which catches the needle and allows the shutter and aperture to move to different positions. So we have kind of a rather long travel to the shutter button. And next to that we have the film winding and shutter charging lever, which is the identical piece which we find on the other Konica rangefinder cameras. And of course here on the front we have the film counter window. On the rear of the camera, this is identical to the other Konica rangefinder cameras, and we have the same eyepiece with this big plastic bezel around it with this kind of cap screw on the back. Underneath this cap screw is the adjusting screw for the horizontal adjustment on the rangefinder. So if you have one of these cameras or another Konica rangefinder camera like an S1.6 or S2, you remove this screw, this cap screw, with a pointed tool with 2 points or a pair of sharp tweezers, and then you can easily adjust the rangefinder. This Konica has something which is called the new loading system, which is supposed to make film loading easier. It's not like the quick loading system that we have on the Canon rangefinder and SLR cameras at the time. We can take a look at how it works by pulling up on the film rewind button and popping open the film door. And pretty much all it is that the film spool is kind of larger around and it has slots all the way across. So that kind of makes it very easy to put in the film leader. And to wind the film a couple of times, making sure that the holes in the film are engaging the teeth in the film winding sprocket, and then just closing the door. The bottom of the camera we have a 1/4-inch tripod socket, and we have the release button which you must push down in order to rewind the film. And on the front, of course, we have the lens assembly, and this is laid out a little bit more simply than the other rangefinder cameras because there are no controls on it other than the self-timer lever. We have a couple of scales here. We have a focusing scale in gold and silver letters, which denote feet and meters. And on the other side here we have a guide number scale, also set in feet and meters, which allows you to easily set up your flash if you're running a flash with the camera. The Konica Matic features a 40mm lens, and it was one of the first cameras to kind of jump into the, I guess, 40mm bandwagon. The 40mm focal length began becoming popular in the 1960s, and it was kind of a midway lens between the wide-angle 35mm lens and the standard 50mm lens. This one has a hexanon lens, and it's kind of important because with Konica cameras, the hexanon lenses were the higher quality lenses. Konica usually made two different levels of lenses, the Hexar lens and the hexanon lens. The hexanon lens being more complicated and I guess capable of delivering better resolution and sharpness. This is kind of evident in the earlier Konica cameras, like the Konica 2 series. The normal 2 series featured a 50mm Hexanon lens, whereas the less expensive 2B and 2BM featured a Hexar lens. So quite a good lens in this camera. The lens is surrounded by this shiny plastic Fresnel thing, which is the light meter cell. And the way the camera operates is when you are pointing the lens at a subject, the light reflecting off of your subject is picked up by this light meter, and it moves the light meter needle on the inside, and as you're pushing down the shutter button, as I mentioned earlier, a kind of step and cam system determines the position of the needle and sets the appropriate aperture and shutter speed for the camera. When you're looking through the viewfinder, you can see the shutter speed that the camera is choosing on the right. And the maximum shutter speed on this camera is about 1/250th of a second. It's kind of a convenient feature because it lets you know if the camera is choosing a rather low shutter speed. And if it is a lower speed, you want to be a little bit more steady when you're holding the camera so your images don't become blurred. Now, the Konica EE Matic is a really good camera for someone who wants a rangefinder camera but doesn't want the complication of having to work out the manual settings for the camera. Pretty much all you have to do with this camera is focus, compose, and shoot, and the camera does everything else itself. The exposure system on this camera is quite accurate, and it gives perfectly good results, probably better than average for other cameras, especially if you are not good at making the adjustments to your manual camera. You'll probably get better results from a camera like this. Being this is a Konica camera from the early 1960s, it's very well made. Solid brass top and bottom covers, which are covered with a really nice and thick satin chrome finish. Quite a bit better than some of the other cameras which were made in Japan at the time. Overall, a really good camera and quite fun to shoot with. Anyway, I was working on this camera yesterday. The last thing I have to do with this is put light seals in it. I was going to do that earlier, but I thought I'd come out and make a video while I can, while the weather gave me a little bit of a break. I'll go ahead and put in light seals when I get back inside. I'll be listing this camera for sale in my Etsy and eBay stores later on, and also my new camera store, japanvintagecamera.com. I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video, so if you're interested in buying this camera or another vintage Japanese camera, you'll find a lot of cameras available there. I plan to be adding more cameras this month and next month as I am able to get them. If you'd like to see more videos about vintage Japanese cameras and photography in Tokyo, please subscribe. I'll be posting more videos soon. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.